Today I want to talk a little bit about your anatomically correct position, directional terms, body planes, body cavities, body regions. So we got quite a bit to cover, but it's really quite important that you understand how to talk about different parts of the body. So we're going to have a quick little video to review this. First, anatomically correct position. This is feet apart, standing, palms facing forward. Palms facing forward is really important. If you have palms facing back, what happens is the bones in your forearm here cross, and then you can't talk about, well, which one's outside, which one's inside. So anatomically correct position, palms facing forward. If we can start to divide the body into a couple of planes. The first plane is sagittal, running right down the middle. So you're dividing the body into right and left. Another plane is the frontal or coronal, running kind of down the side here. Cuts your front and your back, separates out those two. I almost think of it as you can see where the pant seam is. If you were to extend that all the way up the butt and around, that's going to be your frontal or coronal plane. The last plane is the transverse, going across the middle. It's separating out the top from the bottom. So those are our planes. Within those planes and within the body, we want to start talking about structures in relation to one another. And there's a bunch of terms that will help us do that. The first is ventral and dorsal. We have ventral would be our belly side here, dorsal would be our back. Or if you think of a dorsal fin on a fish or a dolphin, it's running down the back here. This is going to be formed by that frontal plane. The next one is anterior and posterior. It's pretty much the same as ventral and dorsal. We got our anterior and our posterior sides. The next set of corresponding terms is going to be our cephalic, referring to our head, rostral, kind of the forehead and nose area, and caudal, referring towards the tail, if we had a tail, which we do have our tailbone, so we have remnants of a tail. The second set that goes together, and if you haven't noticed, all of these terms have a pair. There's always something that corresponds with one of the terms. Our next set is superior and inferior. Superior is going to be closer to the head, inferior is going to be further away. For example, our sternum is superior to our belly button. I mean, it's closer to the head than our belly button. In reverse, we could say our appendix is inferior to the heart. A similar set of terms, but that apply only to the limbs, is going to be proximal and distal. Proximal means closer to the midline, that midline formed by the sagittal crest, or this middle line here, so closer to the midline here, closer to the core body within the appendage. Distal means further out, towards like the tips of your fingers. So we could say our radius is distal to our humerus. Or we could say our humerus is proximal to our hand, so it's closer to the core body. Another set, medial and lateral, and this also applies to kind of using that midline here. Medial means closer to the midline, or pretty much on it. Lateral means outside. So you could say your heart is medial to your right lung, so it's closer to the midline than your right lung. We also have ipsilateral and contralateral. Ipsilateral means that two structures are on the same side. So we could say our appendix is ipsilateral to our right lung on the same side. We could say our right kidney is contralateral to our left kidney, meaning they're on opposing sides, they're opposite sides. And the final set of directional terms is superficial and deep. So superficial means close to the surface. So this outer layer right here. Deep means further down, deeper into the layers. The next thing I want to talk about is specific regions of the body. To be more general and to kind of give people an idea of what we're talking about in the body, we have a bunch of terms to imply a specific region. So we have acromial, which refers to our shoulder here. We have axillary, which is armpit region. Our brachial, which refers to our arm. Cubital, which is our kind of elbow area here. If you bend it right in here, where they like to draw blood from. The antebrachial is our forearm, where we're going to have our ulna and radius. Carpal refers to our wrist, so if you ever hear of carpal tunnel, it's a syndrome of the wrist. And then we have palmar, which is our palm. We have coxal, which is referring to our hip region. Patellar, our knee region here. Cephalic, head, it's also close to that directional term. Facial, referring to our face. Cervical would be our neck through this region. Inguinal is the groin region. We have our femoral, which would refer to our thigh. Our crural, which is our leg, so kind of the lower leg. The tarsal is going to refer to your ankle. And the pedal is the foot. The plantar is the sole of the foot. I don't think I can quite get that up to the camera level. Towards the back of the body, we have some other regions to add in. We have the nuchal, which refers to the back of the crest, or back of the neck here. The cervical referring to the neck in general. And then we have our nuchal referring to the back of the neck. Gluteal refers to the buttocks, and the calcaneal refers to the heel. So these terms are going to help you a lot if you start to learn them now, become proficient in using them. A lot of structures incorporate these names, and it also helps you talk about different structures in relation to one another, especially with the directional terms. It's always going to be in relation to something else. Like the knee is proximal to the ankle. Is always going to be a structure in relation to something else. Within the body itself too, so we have these regions, but also in the body itself we have these cavities where we have our organs. So if we draw our person, and my persons tend to look more like E.T. We have a couple of cavities. This top cavity here in our skull is the cranium. This houses the brain. It is one of two dorsal cavities. So the dorsal cavities are those that are on the back portion of the body. The next dorsal cavity is our vertebral canal. So our vertebral canal is where it's formed by the vertebrae and where the spinal cord is going to run through. Our next cavity is the thoracic cavity. This cavity is formed by your rib cage and your diaphragm. It's going to house the heart and the lungs. So our thoracic cavity, this upper region of our body. The lower cavity is quite big. It's the abdominal pelvic. It gets broken into two subregions, the abdominal, which is more the top part. I always kind of think belly button-ish up to the diaphragm. It's going to hold predominantly the digestive organs, so your stomach, your liver, your pancreas. It also holds the spleen, your intestines. The lower level is our pelvic cavity, formed by our pelvic girdle lower. This is going to hold more of the reproductive and some of the urinary. So each cavity has kind of a designated task or a designated system it likes to have. Our pelvic is focused, the focus area of the reproductive and some of the urinary. Our abdominal, highly focused on the digestive. Our thoracic cavity is going to be our heart and our lungs, so both the cardiac and the respiratory. Our vertebral canal is going to be our spinal cord, and then our cranial is going to house and protect our brain for the nervous system. So these are the regions, the body cavities, directional terms, planes, and anatomically correct position that we use to talk about the body as we move forward.